Greetings and welcome to episode 8 of XEP's Creator Talk. If you're supporting on Patreon, thank you immensely. You guys are keeping the lights on and the content coming. If you're watching later on YouTube when this goes public to all, please consider supporting XEP over at patreon.com/Xbox Expansion Pass, as we would love to have you there. Today, I am joined by one half of the Defining Duke podcast, a YouTube content creator whose reviews and games coverage have led him to over 500,000 subscribers over on YouTube, Mr. Matty Plays. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I love the intro. You make it sound so much more glamorous, and I actually am. I appreciate this.
I learned from the best, and it's Lord Cog who does these epic intros.
I saw the ILP inspo there. Yeah,
That's right.
Good, by the way. Very good.
Yeah, thank you. I think we had a King last episode, and Cog was a while back, and it's always exciting, and that energy they bring, that you got to intro it right.
Yeah, they're a wonderful crew. I'm very envious of their consistent energy that they have. It's incredible.
I'm jealous of their podcast stamina because, like, for me
6
to go
hours
over
constantly.
For me to go over an hour, I bring snacks. I bring a water bottles. Like, I have that blood sugar check. I'm like, what's going on here? And they just marathon it, man.
I hear you. Yeah, we did a crossover episode for over at LSM for the Activision deal. And people were complaining, but I had to eat a sandwich in the middle of it because people don't know because it got all trimmed out and stuff. But like Cog had to leave in the middle of it. And also, like, we were going for 4 hours. I was like, bro, when I start to get on empty, I'm a whole different podcaster, a whole different creator. It's just not the same.
100% the same. And I don't have, like, past a certain point, I start to fade. Like, I do another show called Cast Co-op, and we go for 2 hours and change. And I'm fading by an hour and a half. Like, I can just tell.
It's tough.
It's just different, you know? So I'm so excited to have you here. Of course, you mentioned LSM, and I think let's start there, dude. Sure. What is LSM, and how did you get connected with them?
Yeah, Last Stand Media is a independent content creator group. I guess I would define it as almost like a ragtag bunch in a way. And what I think is really cool about it is we still have like a lot of different walks of life that brought us together. My way into LSM was, I think, pretty unique because I think I served as sort of not just me, but it was Colin's choice overall. But like, I think I was almost like the icebreaker to bring more people into the fold. Because I remember, and by the way, over there we do all sorts of gaming nerd culture podcasts. So Sacred Symbols, PlayStation podcast, Defining Duke, Xbox podcast, Punching Up Nintendo podcast. We have Knockback Nostalgia Throwback podcast. Like, a lot of good stuff going on there. I host Defining Duke alongside Lord Cognito. But yeah, the way I got into Last Stand was interesting because, like many people, I was a listener of Sacred Symbols. I don't listen as much now because I talk to everyone all the time where I kind of know where everyone's going with things. So I don't need to listen to the show as much. But when I was listening, I heard Colin say, this is at the time where they were doing like side quests. People may remember who were a part of Last Stand, or at the time it was called Colin's Last Stand. It was there that they were doing like more interim videos in between these podcasts. And so Colin was looking to pass it off to someone. And as someone who had more free time and a willingness to be a part of what he was doing, I pitched myself. I said, look, I make videos 5 times a week at that point on my Mr. Matty channel. I linked him that and saw if he was interested. And at the same time, Dustin joined my old podcast on my Mr. Matty channel that we now retired, Ham Radio podcast. And so it was over there that it was myself, Carrick of ACG, a former host of Defining Duke, and then Dustin Furman, who's executive producer. So kind of had this like lane into the company, this connection with Colin. And eventually they decided they wanted to do an Xbox podcast because they saw after the Bethesda deal and we talked about it that like, hey, this is going to be like, Xbox is going to be different this generation. Like, they're compared to the Xbox One, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. Like, there will be more worth talking about here. So we want to put a show together. And I was lucky enough to be the first considered for that, which is an honor because, obviously Colin, one of my big inspirations, but also just, to be a part of a thing is something I always really wanted. I just think it's really good to have your like true friends on the internet, which is hard to come by. So, a lot of trust was placed in that because, obviously get stabbed in the back, it's going to burn really bad. But I know after what Colin went through, I didn't really have that fear. I feel like if anything, he would get it. So, we put together the show and it was myself and Carrick and right now Defining Duke's really with COG and I enjoying its best stretch of success yet,
Mm-hmm.
which has been really nice to see. Because there was a time where when we transitioned from Carrick, who just needed more time to himself,
Mm-hmm.
to COG as the host, there was a time where like, you know, numbers dipped, interaction dipped, and it was kind of, it sucked because I felt like our show actually was getting better with
Mm-hmm.
COG and is at the best it's ever been. I felt like there had to be a spotlight put on that, but it's really hard to control your own destiny when you're in a network, so to say. But for people to seek us out, recommend us, find us, it's been great. I know it's a long-winded answer to just how I got involved, but I guess I'm telling you how it's going too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, it's been great. It really has been. You know, it's, you know, especially seeing, you know, our goal when we started up, we're not yet, I don't think, but we want to kind of be like the number one just podcast for Xbox fans, but like hopefully gaming in general. And you know, that as we grow, you realize like you get a lot of people who love what you're doing, but you get a lot of people who don't like it too.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, how you combat with that, and how much you listen to feedback, how much is of what community is that coming from, whether it be like devoted Xbox fans or people who just don't like you and don't want to see you succeed. It can be sometimes tough to see and read the tea leaves, but overall it's been going really well. And yeah, being a part of Last Stand is one of the bigger joys of my life. I'm very happy I made the decision, because you know, paint's a little bit of a target on your back, or at least that's the fear. I don't think it, at least maybe, I don't know if people really like me, but I haven't seen any sort of deviation in treatment. And if it's happened, it's behind my back, and I have not seen it personally. So it's been going well.
It's funny how many plights of the content creator you were able to touch on so quickly, because you're right. There are times where you feel like you're making a great product. You feel like it's improving, and eyes just aren't there. Algorithms don't match up. Carrick, ACG, incredible content creator in his own right, but there is a finite amount of time that we have to give towards
Yeah.
creation. And you know, for Last Stand, of course, you guys have your finger on the pulse of several different communities across PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox. Lilimo Games is another project that Colin works on, which we had him on for that purpose.
Nice.
It's interesting to see how many connections LSM has, and as a content creator, you guys have to navigate that ebb and flow of attention. And to make an Xbox podcast, it feels like there's no better time. In so many ways, the Xbox One generation brought with it so many headaches that in this Series SX generation, we've had our fair share of headaches, but it feels like there's, for the most part, something worth talking about nearly week in and week out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, yeah, like when I was able to start making at least weekly Xbox news updates on my Mr. Matty channels, when I realized like, oh, we actually have a lot happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because when Microsoft is expanding with Game Pass, their fingers are just in so many different cookie jars around the industry. Like I've talked a lot about how I feel like the way Xbox exclusives are viewed are very different from the rest of the industry. Because I feel like, as you know, not to just base it off numbers, but if I look at, say, the viewership of one of my videos and it's about a day one Game Pass game, a lot of people approach it with that same, not exact same energy, but they approach it with a similar excitement as they would for an exclusive when it's day one Game Pass. Like it feels like, even though it's out on other platforms, it's an Xbox game.
Sure.
And so that gives obviously a lot more to talk about when like third party kind of feels for some people like first party, even it's technically not. It's like a boon of the first party, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gives us a lot to talk about, right? And especially the ABK deal, we've had nothing but that to talk about. And so it's going to be a strange world when that's done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, what do we talk about now?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely been a good time to be an Xbox creator, and a good time to get really invested in the community. Because, you know, I've been a fan my whole life, but like many people, I jumped ship during the Xbox One gen. I just, you know, it's not like I have any allegiance to them. And it's like, I think the games are better over here. They're looking better, running better.
Mm-hmm.
The exclusives are here. You know, I love exclusives from Xbox during that gen, like Ori and Sunset Overdrive. But yeah, like I jumped ship, no doubt about it. I tell people all the time, like I may host an Xbox podcast, but I'm a gamer first and foremost. And whoever's serving me the best meal, I'm going to be eating at that restaurant is how I approach it. So yeah, otherwise, but it's been a good time to I think, be an Xbox fan. You know, I think Redfall aside, you know, with Starfield on the horizon, it's starting to look up for a lot of Xbox fans.
I agree. And I'd like to loop back to this topic in a bit, but
Sure.
you mentioned Matty Plays, and I want to give due attention to that. That is your YouTube channel. You've amassed an incredible following there. I look forward to your reviews, your impressions. I always get a kick out of your thumbnails because I have to think you've got a finite amount of like facial expressions.
I have
And
a whole
listen,
story behind that if you want to know
let's
the.
hear it, man, because I love this. Make sure in this story we also give credit and time to Matty Plays as a channel because I want to make sure
Yes,
people
we
look
will
that up.
talk about it. Yeah, I'll keep it
Okay,
quick and simple. So,
go for it.
um, a lot of people feel the same way. They think my thumbnails are hilarious, which I don't know how to feel about it. It's me smiling most of the time, which I'm like, yo, is that a funny face or whatever? You know, like, is it my facial expressions? My fiance always gets a kick out of me when I talk with my hands a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So she just thinks I'm fun. It's funny how animated I am all the time. And so I think that carries over into the thumbnails a little bit. Of course, in the nature of clickbait, the era, I should say, of like clickbait and over dramatic thumbnails, I think I naturally just fit in pretty scarily well.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is, like, originally what I do is when I worked from my house, I would take my camera into my bathroom where the lighting was just right. And I would take I take like outfits in there, like different shirts, and I'd take pictures of all different faces depending on, and usually like 2 or 3, just because I don't produce on Mr. Matty Plays, at least I can't produce many videos in advance because we're so modern
Mm-hmm.
focused that, like, you can only get so ahead of the news or discussions and whatnot
Sure.
before it's dried up, right? So but that's what I do. I'd go into the bathroom and take these like chest up pictures of myself where the lighting was right. At my office, I took it. Jimmy Champagne will know because he does my thumbnails for Retro Rebound. There's like a blank wall that just had like Ninja Turtle decorations behind me, but again, the lighting was right. So that's where I took pictures for years. And
Mm-hmm.
now in my new house, I'm taking them in the laundry room where the natural lighting works. So yeah, it's the things you never know about. People may find it hilarious, but I'm going through it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going through it. I'm taking pictures in my laundry room and making thumbnails out of them. But it's definitely a big part of the channel, no doubt about it.
It's part of playing the game, right? Because like I find it funny how important thumbnails are. I'm not good at them. I've gone on a journey. Anyone that's been with XEP for a long time, Matty, like they were atrocious a year ago. And they are on a steady improvement. And like I'm not talented, so like I'm learning it, right? But when I look at like a year ago to now, it's like, ooh. But I also see an engagement flip depending on the wording, depending on is Phil Spencer in the thumbnail? And if he is, kicks up engagement. And it's wild. Yeah. It's part
There's
of
certain
playing the
faces
game
that just work really well.
Yeah. So you've had to learn that then, I would imagine.
Yeah. Originally, like, I was just a Fallout content creator. So it was like, can we put the Vault Boy in here? Because like the Vault Boy has 1,000,001 renditions. So before I was putting my face in my thumbnails, the Vault Boy was kind of my face, if you will. It's a really weird way of putting it, but the Vault Boy would have shocked faces, angry faces, happy faces. And given that I was just talking about Bethesda stuff all the time, that served as the reaction to the news I was talking about. Especially because for a while, it's funny now, it's not like I like it anymore, but I hated being on camera. I'm still not crazy about being on camera. I typically enjoyed the content I made when I was just kind of off camera and just working with audio. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's a comfort thing or something like that, but yeah, this was something that I had done for years now. And yeah, you got to learn a lot of things, I guess. And one of the tougher pills to swallow, I think, as a content creator is like your title only semi matters. And I think a lot of viewers get it the opposite way. They're like, oh, you clickbaited me this title, which is definitely a big part of it. Like if you lie in your title, yeah, you baited the heck out of someone, right? But when it comes to thumbnails, like that's really the first thing someone sees. And since so many of them look the same, like with Retro Rebound, we've kind of been lucky where no one's really treaded on our ground much. But like Jimmy, who works on our thumbnails, tries to monitor what other people are doing to make sure we're not just blending in with what other people are doing. So it's a mixture of like being original, not getting too crazy with it, which I know originally when you're working with the blown up image, you're like, oh, tuck in like a 50% opacity picture of like Todd Howard here, and I'll put flames here. And then when you look at it like zoomed out is when you're like, this is a mess. I can't even tell what's going on here, right? Gotcha. So there's things down to a science I learned about, like colors that catch people's eyes, blue, yellow, like brings attention to it. A face apparently helps. So there I am, right? And yeah, it took me, I'm right there with you, man. No content creators escaped from the the thumbnail gauntlet, I like to call it, right? Like you got to go through a lot of different phases of it. I've gone through many of my own. I talked about my Fallout ones. I had one that almost looked like a folded ribbon, kind of, and it kind of had a similar layout to what I have now, where like you had the company logo on the top, something in the middle, but nothing was on the bottom for that one. And what I've noticed now is thumbnails that do best. Like I talk with Luke Stevens a decent amount. He's a great content creator. And we were laughing because he used to have like very intricate thumbnails. And now what he does, he's like, bro, I just take text and I lay it across a JPEG, kind of like overlap it in some areas, don't overlap it in others. And he's having some of the best success of his career now. So it's a lot of people complain like, oh, you're riding this thumbnail into the ground or whatever, which I don't see as much anymore. I used to. But the reality is, like, you got to let people know, like, this is a Matty video or this is an XEP video. Like, people have to be able to identify it's you, while also being able to have the reach where if someone who doesn't know you is scrolling by, they want to give you some of their time, right? And without making them feel cheated. It's a extremely, I don't want to oversell it because I think some people are very disingenuous with it, but like it's a tough line to walk. And that's why once you find that template that works, you pray to God no one bigger than you steals it, and you just go with it until you can't go with it anymore, or until you see something that's like indefinitely better that you know is gonna work for your channel more. But yeah, man, it's a game. It's a game. Like YouTube is a game, and I don't like that it's like that. I've definitely, had my run-ins with people who've had issues with either titles or thumbnails, but like I don't even say it's a scapegoat. Like it's not a myth. Some people have said the algorithm is a myth. I don't want to curse, but it's a lie. It's a complete lie. And it's not that no one's using it as an excuse. Just I call it like the rare chosen ones. Like I think of Scott the Waz, Scale Up. Like these guys could say, I pooped in a blanket, my review, and it'll get like 800,000 views. Like they're chosen ones. But a lot of us got to really kind of fight to gain that ground. And Scale Up and I talked about that pretty extensively in a video of like, he's like, yeah, I had to do what you did. Like I had to make my thumbnails kind of poppy, attractive. And he's like, then I got to a level and then you stop. And it's all about building the base and then you stop. And that's where you grow even more because now you have a reputation to lean on. But for those who are just starting out, or even me, where you mentioned having a sizable audience, but in the scheme of things, it's like I'm still scratching and clawing my way to a place where like I don't got to look over my shoulder every video and be like, oh God, that's flopping. So yeah, it is a game, man. And I know you understand as well as anyone, like especially with your experimentation, and hopefully you're not down on yourself because like that's, again, it's totally normal to kind of at your thumbnails. And what that means is progress, right? Like your old thumbnails, you're like, oh, that's not that good. It's like, okay, good. That means I'm happy with where I'm at now. And then I can only get better. So try not to, I hope you're not beating yourself up too much over that.
I'm learning not to. I think it's funny because how do we measure success? How Skill Up measures is different than Matty, is different than, Divining Duke. And then like, where I am now, I'm enjoying, I'm growing, but to some I'm flopping, to others I'm stellar. And it's just funny how much the scale means as far as what we create. And I think it comes back to making sure we enjoy the process. At least that's what I would think is the important part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for a lot of people, it's within the core product, right? So like for me, I'd be Mr. Matty. Like that's definitely my job, if you will. But there was a degree of fatigue setting, and I'm just like, yeah, news again, discussion again. I love this. I wouldn't want to do anything else, but I've been, granted I'm 28, but like I've been doing this for over a decade. Like it's like, yeah, I need something new. And so I started up a second channel, Retro Rebound, because I was like, I don't care if this is successful or not. I just need this outlet that is very much like exploring my history of games and hoping people kind of gravitate towards that and want to talk about things that I previously thought, like, again, when you're in that bubble, that's another thing that happens. You grow, but you're in a bubble. And it's like, how long do I have to wait to pop the bubble? And is this a bubble that can grow into another one? Like I started off as Bethesda, which worked because then I transitioned to RPGs. And that works because then I transitioned when Bethesda was bought by Xbox into Xbox, right? So it's like finding bubbles within bubbles within bubbles and trying to just always be nimble because you can't do the same thing for far too long. But I needed something kind of creatively rejuvenating. And that's where I found Retro Rebound, where I could kind of talk about JRPGs, which is like really my favorite genre nowadays. And over on Mr. Matty, it's just you can just tell it's a totally different audience. Like I'll post videos on Retro Rebound. Again, not to talk, I don't want anyone to get the idea of I'm just numbers, but to get an idea of interest. Like my Final Fantasy 15 retrospective on Retro Rebound hit over 200K, which is like I love that. Like I like that game a lot in a lot of separate ways. I go into in that video, but also my review for Final Fantasy 15 on Mr. Matty when the game first came out did like, 30K, which I'm also very happy with. But you can just tell the difference in what you've been labeled as and the interest in your content. Like, it's very liberating to know, oh, I've got a place I can go and just talk about whatever. And then the third string of that really would be making my own game. That's kind of like the last piece of the puzzle for me, where it's like, okay, I needed something within games that's kind of future focused, that's a part of the overall business I want to build, that also is like a passion thing. And that's a whole story I can get into if you ever desire. But yeah, it's, I think to enjoy the process, some people focus on just one component of it, but sometimes going beyond it actually enhances the thing you're trying to flavor up a little bit, because a lot of people watching you, like, don't want the change. Like, they don't want you to really shake things up and change they subscribe to you for a reason, right? And the interest is still there, the viewership's still there. So it's like, I've tried different things. I tried, on Mr. Matty Plays, like RPG Time Machine. I tried Humanity's Worst Games. I tried friendly competition. I tried retrospective reviews, and to varying degrees of success or mostly failure, quite frankly. And you realize, like, okay, these people don't want change. They want Matty talking about RPGs, Bethesda, and Xbox. And like, okay, got it. Like, how do I make this where I'm still enjoying this, but I feel like I'm not limiting myself? And so you go somewhere else. And I'm lucky enough to have found an audience there too. So, yeah, man, it's that enjoyment of what you do is so important, that it doesn't feel like work. Otherwise, like many people, you fizz out and you stop pursuing YouTube as a job, really, because that's the difference for a lot of people. I tell people all the time, anyone can do this. Anyone listening right now, I'm not just saying to gas you up. You can do it. It's just about enjoying the process enough where you can go through that stretch of time where you're like, man, no one's watching me, I'm irrelevant, which we all feel. It's like, once you get past that and you stick with it, you will find your audience, you will find your niche, and that will help you grow. To what amount, I don't know, but you will find a community. The internet's just too big to not. You just have to have patience and, of course, love for it.
That's awesome. And good advice too. Something to keep in mind. I dig Retro Rebound because, like you recently did Ultimate Spider-Man.
Oh yeah,
I love that game.
So good.
I love that game. I so wish that game would come back.
I know. It'd be perfect for it, right? With the art style, a remaster. It makes so much sense.
It does. It makes too much sense. It makes too much sense, and I'm offended by it. Because gaming doesn't always. Now, we talked about kind of Xbox and the Xbox One generation, and or rather, you said you kind of skipped it. I did too. When I went from 360 to PS4, and somewhere about halfway through that generation, I returned. I think it was Master Chief Collection and the 1S and the Phil Spencer, the Back Compact games with gold. It felt like there was a new direction happening, and in the last few years, being an Xbox content creator for fun and enjoyment, I'm still a gamer. There's still a PS5. I'm stoked for Spider-Man 2. I feel like I'm watching Xbox morph and change into something different, but I don't even know that I'm sure quite where it's going. I think it's an app-based library, but I'm not even sure. How have you seen Xbox change over the years, in general?
Yeah, it's funny because, like, when Game Pass was announced, I have a video on my Mr. Matty channel where I was like, this is going to change the industry. And I remember that video getting a ton of dislikes. Like, a lot of people were like, no, it's not, like, it's whack. And I was like, there's no way this doesn't find an audience if they keep going down this route. And then look at it now, right? Like, it's absolutely changed the industry, to some for worse, for many for better. For me with Xbox and their changes, like, I like what they've done. And I say that because I like that every ecosystem is doing something different. I like that PlayStation has their very traditional, we have exclusives approach, right? I like that Xbox, because they got their butt whooped so bad during the Xbox One generation, went, okay, we either shut down the operation, which was a potential thing that was going to happen, or we kind of reorient our focus and go in a different direction. So they go Azure Cloud Servers, Game Pass. They go on an acquisition spree, as we know. A lot of exclusives coming in-house now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing a type of aggressive Xbox we've never really seen before, which is, I think, fun. I know, again, for some people, it's literally the bane of their existence. And I get that. But as a gamer, I'm very excited about the value proposition of Game Pass. I'm very excited that indies have a place to go. And look, Sea of Stars is a great example. Sea of Stars is day one Game Pass. It's day one PS Plus. You can get it for free, if you will, on both platforms if you're part of their subscription services. And guess what happens? Sabotage, who's behind Sea of Stars, got a bag from both these companies. It's guaranteed lump sum cash, maybe some other little like X amount of downloads, you get this much money kind of deal. But they got money from both these services. So I just can't buy into the mindset that this is bad for the industry. And then you've got Nintendo, who's just in their ivory tower, off by themselves, just doing Nintendo things. They march to the beat of their own drum, right? And so that's why I like what Xbox is doing, because they're not trying to be anyone else, for lack of better words. They're marching to their own path and betting on something they believe in, which I think is much more interesting than like, oh, what's PlayStation doing? Okay, let's do that, which they tried to do, right? Like when PlayStation had their own Uncharted, they bought out the exclusivity for, I think, Rise of the Tomb Raider. And people were like, what's going on here?
Like, why?
Yeah, why? Like, why are you doing this, right? And you could just tell the treatment of Xbox versus PlayStation, it's just not the same. Whether that people think it's fanboyish or not is not my problem. It's not the same. In some ways it benefits them. I think, a lot of times they definitely catch the ire of press and creators alike, and don't get the kind of overlooking of things like maybe a Nintendo definitely gets, or sometimes PlayStation gets. But as a gamer, I can't help but enjoy Game Pass because of things that I get to try that I otherwise wouldn't. I think of Power Wash Simulator, House Flipper, these kind of weird games. I'm like, let's see what this is all about, right? Or more exciting day one Game Pass games, like I think of Wo Long, which I would have been there day one, but many people are like, Sekiro kind of game, pretty tough, 70 bones, kind of steep. Do I want to risk this? You don't have to. You can try it before you buy it, effectively. And I think that's just very powerful for the consumer. I know as industry enthusiasts, as creators, we have to look genuinely at the economics of the business. And there's no denying that there could be concern if Game Pass doesn't end up profitable. But as fans, it's really not our problem. And it's not to hand wave any concerns people have, but it's really like if Game Pass ends up not being profitable and they got to shut it down, guess what? We got a ton of games, I put this in quotes, for free for a long stretch of time that otherwise we wouldn't have got. And it was a pretty cool ride. So that's how I look at it, man. Like, I think it's overall a really good addition to our industry. And as someone who, last point here, sorry, I'm going on a while.
You're good, man.
Is I didn't grow up with a lot of money. Not as like a sob story. We didn't grow up in a wealthy household. That's all there is to it. And I would have killed for something like Game Pass, 100%. Like, dude, I bought one game and that was it for a while. And everyone has that story. One game, that's all you get for months and months and months. And especially back then, the industry, there was games coming out consistently, but it's not like now we're heading into August and every week is this insane amount of video games, right? Like July was a low key, quiet month, but
It's
August, you got Atlas Fallen, you got Starfield coming up, you got Baldur's Gate 3, Sea of Stars. I mean, the list goes on, right? You got so many games coming out, and many of these, especially if you look at the September catalog, are going to be on Game Pass. And it's like, I don't have to pick and choose for once. I can just consume. And that's really nice right now, especially with, to me, that perspective of I grew up with like, you pick one game and a lot of times you get a stinker and you're like, well, I guess I got to play this anyways. I guess I got to try to find some enjoyment out of this anyways. That's not really I don't want to say not a problem anymore, but because you still have to pay for your subscription service, but again, it lowers that asking price enough to try something. And we're starting to base metrics off of like how many people played this rather than just buying it, right? Engagement being a big thing here. And so, yeah, man, I think what Xbox is doing is really fun. It's really different. And I like that they're still keeping some of the traditional spirit. I think with Activision in the fold, with mobile gaming and a real clear focus on PC gaming, I'm curious how quickly, I talk about evil villain Xbox, how quickly they come out to play a little bit and kind of start playing hardball like Sony. What happens if they start to get a little bit of dominance in the industry? Do they get complacent like Sony? I'm putting quotes again.
Sure.
It's anybody's guess, but right now I'm enjoying where we're at.
Man, the thing about Game Pass is like, so in 2023, I've had 14, 50, 20 some odd developers on, something like that. And a number of them have been Game Pass and sang its praises, and a number of them haven't been, even Xbox exclusive games, and they want to be in Game Pass and can't get in. But Game Pass has led me to Exoprimal, which I think is insane fun. Yeah, but it's not going to be around for a year or 2 years. I don't know if it has the legs, but I got to play it. And then that led me to buying an $8 season pass to support them because I was in. That supports a developer, right? You mentioned Sea of Stars. Thierry's been on the show twice at this point. Any listener that hasn't checked it out, go listen to those interviews because Thierry's amazing. But like knowing that his studio is getting funded for that universe, for Sea of Stars, getting that bag of money, getting the engagement, and still able to sell in other places, I love that. I want those small creators to get that outlet. There's a lot that comes negatively with everybody having a microphone and a camera and a place to publish content and games, etc. But also it means that people can make what they want to make and create. And whether it's Hi-Fi Rush that happens because of Game Pass or because of whatever it is that outlets we have, or little games like Planet of Lana, or the big stuff like Starfield.
I know Cog loved it.
Yeah, and the Planet of Lana devs, super cool. Game Pass helps, like it matters and it's neat. So that's kind of neat. And knowing that Activision's coming, what I fear that evil villain Xbox, I think it's very similar. I'm curious who impacts who more. Do we see Xbox influence Activision more, or Activision influence Xbox more? And it will be a blending of cultures. No matter what, it'll be a blend. We've seen, I think, Xbox at their best. And Matt, I don't know if you agree, but like because they've been in third place or losing, we've seen the best. The gaming's been great with them.
I agree. Like when, at least, especially if their output matches what they're showing. Like I think everything. I love their previous showcase. I really unapologetically fanboyed the hell out of that that showcase. I was like, that was ridiculously good. I was like, you had all the studios that you bought show out with unique looking games that didn't feel like they were built by template, weren't built by built by telemetry. I just felt like I saw a lot of unique stuff there, and also to the spirit of these companies. Like Avowed looks like an Obsidian game with a little bit of a bigger budget. In terms of scope, I know visually there's some concerns. I get that. Fable right now has the biggest flex of them all because no one believes it was actually gameplay, and Playground Games has stood on their square twice in a row now and been like, it's gameplay. Like what you see is gameplay. So they got the biggest flex opportunity incoming. Starfield speaks for itself. The list goes on. I don't need to run through all of them all.
Isn't it? I don't mean to interrupt, but isn't it interesting that Playground has to defend themselves? Playground Games, who have not made a bad game, but it's funny because like they do, because of the way that Uncanny Valley is getting where it's going, and that's gameplay. But Playground of all people has to defend. That's like Respawn having to defend themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, it's perfectly put right there. Because like, I'm not a big Forza guy, famously so on Defining Duke. I always joke about it, but I do respect that like Playground Game just doesn't miss. And that doesn't mean they can't ever miss. I think that's the trap a lot of consumers walk into is like, for me, like when I was in my teens, I was like, I love Bethesda Game Studios. I never vocalize this, or I feel like I thought it, but subconsciously it's like, you just trust them. Like they'll never do anything wrong. Like, you just always make good stuff. Right. You don't want to walk into that trap, but I think Playground Games deserves the benefit of the doubt. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And so, yeah, man, like the lineup is looking really strong right now. I feel like we're kind of in that waiting phase. And what I've said for a while is like Starfield feels like if it's not, then I don't know what will be the corner turn for them. Is it long overdue? Absolutely. Is 2022 for Xbox embarrassing? Completely. Like there's no denying any of that.
Yeah.
But Game Pass has shown that it can keep this whole entire platform afloat while Xbox figures out what the heck is going on, which is, again, kind of impressive when you think about it. I'm not applauding them. again, the fact that they only had in 2022 Grounded and Pentiment, great games, but come on, they're not going to sell you consoles. That's not the big push you're looking for if you're Xbox. And the fact that it's not really until I'd say the end of this year that we're finally getting like the heave ho kind of move from them with Forza and also Starfield. But beyond that, we know what's coming up. That lineup is looking strong. Where I think the best is really yet to come. And I hope it starts to, once they get that connection in Japan, I'm hoping it really does start to evoke a little bit of that. I would define it as 360 era energy. Like I like that they were in on Japanese games as much as they were in on, like, you know, your Halo and Gears of War. When they were at their peaks, they were still doing things like Lost Odyssey and making things for everybody because they were a platform that was so far reaching. So I really can't help but cross my fingers that that's kind of the way they go. But you mentioned like Activision rubbing off on Xbox or Xbox rubbing off on Activision. And the fear I have is that I think Activision is going to rub off on Xbox more. I think with Xbox's PC client for Game Pass being as terrible as it is, you got BlizzNet right there. That's definitely something that they're going to probably want to integrate in some way, or at least take some cues from to make the PC Game Pass app better. And Xbox has made it no secret about mobile games. Like this is, you know, they're like console gains are flat. Mobile games are the fastest growing in the world. So as much as it's a tough pill to swallow, I feel like when you looked at Activision just made in the last 6 months, $1.9 billion off of mobile games versus consoles, which did a combined across all of them, 1.19 billion. Yeah, man. It's like, it's real. I have to separate myself from the moment a bit and be like, yeah, like as a business, they're probably going to be like, whoa, look at all that money there from that their Candy Crush looking pretty good, man. And so, as much as I want them to continue to pursue console and stuff, I think the reality checker in me, which I blame Xbox for that because I was never like this, but the reality checker in me is like, hold your horses, don't get carried away, don't get too excited yet, which I think sets Xbox up to really impress me in a best case scenario. But yeah, I do worry about the impact Activision will have on this company, but still there's a lot that's exciting down the road, at least in the near term, within the next year and change, which I'm excited to see.
I think the most comforting thought I have amidst all of this, because there's worry, there's excitement, all of it, is that the market tends to dictate, and people don't buy into what they don't want, don't like. There is a balancing factor there, and so people do tend to vote with their wallets. And maybe it takes a little longer with mobile because sometimes that happens. But we've seen Xbox do a good job, I think, of fixing the ship, righting the ship when it was sinking at one point. And if they overcourse correct, I don't feel like they couldn't get it back on track if they miss.
For sure. The ownership of how bad Redfall was kind of spoke for itself.
Did
should have never happened. Ever. They should have been checking in on that game, and if it was as bad as it ended up being, I hate to say it, probably should have been canceled. But the fact that they came out and owned it doesn't make it any better, but at least there's an accountability and a care enough there to be like, hey, we did this wrong, we have to be better. And now it's about doing better. You know, the reality is with this new generation coming in of all these companies they bought in 2018, Bethesda firing on all cylinders, really saving Xbox's hind here in 2023, because without it, you know, without Hi-Fi Rush, yes, even Redfall and Starfield, you're left with Forza Motorsport, you're left with Minecraft Legends, and that's it for Xbox. Like that's all their output right now from first party, and that's not enough. Maybe financially it's enough because those are two of their biggest franchises, but as a consumer looking to be excited, we need a little bit more than that ultimately. But I'm losing my train of thought on what I was originally going for with that. But
I do like you talk about Xbox ownership. My favorite part about Phil Spencer owning the Redfall thing was saying that he'd bet on that team again.
Yes,
that meant a lot,
I did like that. You know, because it's funny because in the same breath, they were kind of quick to throw him under the bus, and say like, yeah, it didn't meet quality standards, but yeah, man,
I'd bet on.
I hope they give him another chance because I mean, I think they are based off, you know, what we're seeing with some job listings. They're hiring for a single player action RPG. I'm like, good guys, good. Problem is with Redfall, man, they lost so much talent with that project that 70% of the original team left. So like anyone who worked on Prey pretty much of note is gone. And so now they've got to rehire talent that is of an arcane level that clearly wasn't there for this next game. And I'm really crossing my fingers, man. Like, I'm the biggest arcane stan probably in the Xbox community that's got a platform right now, because I was telling people with Deathloop, I was like, I don't know. I said, I think Dishonored and Prey are way better in this. And then Redfall comes out, and it's like, now that Redfall has come out, and like in hindsight, I'm like, Deathloop in comparison, I was like, it wasn't that bad. Says so much. It really does about like the kind of steady decline I'm seeing. So I really want them in both Lyon and Austin to hit a home run here, because it's been kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I concur, and I'm hopeful. Because I saw glimpses in Redfall. Like, there were moments where I was like, I can almost see it, But
God bless you for that. I personally never had that feeling. I was like, right off the rip, once I left the boat and I elbowed someone in the back as like a stealth takedown, I was like, oh no. Immediately my heart dropped. I was like, that's not right. Yeah. Something's wrong here.
Yeah. It's yes. We'll just leave it there.
It stings.
Yeah. So, Matt, that's a perfect spot for us to kind of tone down on. I want to thank you for joining me. It means the absolute world. Please let people know where they can find your content, where they should look for to hear your voice and see your face.
Sure. I'm available in a lot of places, fortunately, for those who have walked away and said, wow, that eeky, squeaky voice, I want more of that. So you can find me on my personal YouTube channels, Mr. Matty Plays, where we talk about Xbox, Bethesda, RPGs, and it's more modern gaming news focus and reviews, previews, anything modern gaming. We're really in on that. We're working on, at least at the time of recording this, a handful of reviews. So we got a lot underway there. You can find me on Retro Rebound. If you're not into modern gaming, you're kind of tired of that, you can watch me talk about all things from Final Fantasy to Toy Story video games. It's a really good time there, and I feel like a lot of people who give that channel a shot enjoy it more than my Mr. Matty stuff, which is totally fine. And then you can find me on Defining Duke if you like Xbox podcasts that are trying to be up to snuff here with the Xbox expansion pass. If you can, if we can reach that quality bar, then you can go ahead and check us out. Just don't expect too much out of us. But otherwise, thank you for having me. It's been great to be here with you.
Absolute pleasure and an honor to be joined by you, man. It means the absolute world. And listeners, if you're listening on Patreon, thank you for helping keep the lights on. If you're finding this on YouTube down the line, please consider supporting XEP over at patreon.com/Xbox Expansion Pass. Support Matty Plays. Thank you guys for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Take care, everybody.
Goodbye.